giving you useful and practical tips to help you make more money selling travel. This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast, and here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
Welcome to an entirely different episode of the Art of Selling Travel Podcast. This one comes to us courtesy of somebody within our Facebook community who asked specifically, Glenda, I've heard you mention a few times you have ADHD. I just received my official diagnosis a little over a year ago, and I'm still going through trial and error finding my best course of treatment. I would love to hear about what systems, processes, mantras, tools, routines, or anything else that helped you with your ADHD brain and making it work for your business. A podcast on this would be amazing. Well, then the comments went wild. I've heard, this became something that so many others resonated with inside of our Facebook group. I love that one that refers to it as neurospicy. I kind of like the idea of being neurospicy. That works for me. But here's the scoop. I did say in that post that I was going to be looking for experts who can speak to it at a whole different level than what I can. I'm still working through figuring out what works for me. Here's the really fun part. Behind the scenes, I have somewhere I have to be in just a little while here. So we are going to try and get this episode recorded in one shot, although we're already on the fourth recording because I kept forgetting to add myself in because I don't have my camera today. So I can't actually see myself. So I forgot myself. So I was recording and not actually recording. Anyhow, we are going to get this episode done and then I got to get out the door. I fully admit time blindness is absolutely one of the things that I suffer from. So this one's going to be a test for sure. Okay. Everybody finds out what their diagnosis is a little different than somebody else. I've heard many times that women quite often or girls aren't diagnosed until well into adulthood, a lot of times in their 40s, and that boys tend to be diagnosed much earlier. Here's the scoop. Back in the 80s, when I was a child, I don't know how old I was, probably eight or nine. I remember being taken to a psychiatrist to be tested. And I remember being in that room and hearing a typewriter ding. Yes, that long ago, they had typewriters. For those that don't know what those are, that was computers without monitors. And when you got to the end of the line, it went bing, and then you had to hit the return and it went back to the other end. But no, seriously, I remember being in that office. I don't remember what questions were being asked. I don't remember too terribly much, but I do remember the second I heard that typewriter bing and everything drained out of my brain. And I remember the psychiatrist looking at me saying, "Did that distract you?" And I said, no, not at all. "What was your question?" And then even as a child, when I was told, "No, you don't have ADHD," I remember thinking, oh, but maybe that psychiatrist wasn't very good because they didn't see that I was totally distracted. And then I went through this whole world of trying to figure out why I couldn't do things other people could do. Why could I get so hyper-focused on something and then be completely bored of it just the next week? My entire education system was built on hyper-focusing on one or two, I don't even remember what they called them, but like basically modules of my class, scoring 100% or 90% or 95%, and then basically flunking the rest of it so that at the end of the year, I averaged out probably about a 51%. I slept through so many classes. If you put me inside of a presentation and the people are boring, I am going to sleep. I will say shout out to my English teacher. I had him from, I believe, grade 7 right through to 12. I went to a K to 12 school. We didn't have a lot of variety in teachers. But I will never forget some of the stories he told us. I will never forget being absolutely captivated by the way he told stories. And I will never forget my chemistry teacher being so monotone and boring and slow, and begging my parents to please let me drop the class. And they kept telling me, no, 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 you have to go. And then they went to parent teacher conference and came home, and my dad told me I could drop the class because in 10 minutes he almost fell asleep. But here's the scoop. I went through my whole life believing that I was normal, that I was just like everybody else, and that there was something wrong with me because I couldn't keep up. I went into adulthood. I raised my children. I went through all of these things. And then I remember in 2017 being on the second floor of my office building, pacing and feeling like an absolute caged lion. And by the time I got to the end of 2018, I thought, there is no way I can do this anymore. I have got to break free, because that feeling of being caged, being told that I have no choice, I have to be in my office, did not mean that I was productive. It did not mean that I was doing things that needed to be done. So instead, I would pace my office until the office closed. Everybody went home, and then I worked well into the night. I didn't know that it was something wrong with the chemistry of my brain. And I don't even like to use the word wrong. I just didn't know that it was beyond my control. I kept telling myself, oh, you must be lazy. You must be this. You must be that. Look at you. Look what everybody else can do. And you can't do that. Didn't matter that I was selling so much travel. I think my biggest year, I sold 1.5 million all on my own. I also had a team of outside sales agents. I had a team of inside, but it didn't matter. Except then I couldn't figure out why I went from being able to remember every name of every client, every hotel, every airline, everything that they all did. And it felt like overnight, I had literally short-circuited my brain. I broke my brain. That's how it felt. I had broke my freaking brain. And yet for everybody else, life continued. So then I just thought there was something wrong with me. I actually went through a phase where I genuinely, because I was so burnt out and so broken, I genuinely thought I had dementia coming in. That is a terrifying thought. That was part of the reason why when people say, well, why did you close your office? Wasn't it successful? And I said, yes, it was. And they're like, why didn't you sell it? And I said, because I am beyond terrified somebody would make me stay. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to coach. I wanted to help small businesses. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have the freedom to work from wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I wanted the freedom to not spend another day like that caged lion. I didn't want to feel like I lived in a cage. It was bad enough that I was piled to the sky, it felt like, with stacks of files and papers and brochures and this and that. And then as I moved on, I went to a conference in Denver, and the keynote speaker there was Chalene Johnson. And I really didn't know her other than Turbo Jam. And I was trying to figure out why on earth was she their keynote speaker. And lo and behold, I discovered she has this other life where she runs multiple businesses. And I actually got an opportunity to talk with her at the end of the conference because she waits outside and chats with everybody. And she asked me about my business, and I said, actually, I just closed it. It was at the end of 2018, I closed my business. And she looked at me and she said, did you grieve it? And I said, what? I chose to close it. She's like, I know, but did you grieve it? And instantly all these tears came. And I thought, wow, she understands something I don't. So as we fast forward, and don't get me wrong, for years leading up to this, I'm like, I swear I have got to be ADHD. And my husband's like, no kidding. But it wasn't until 2020 hit and everybody was bored at home, creating their TikToks, doing their this, that, the other, that it really started to be something people talked about. But what really did it for me was when I was watching some of her videos when it was between her and her husband, talking about her neurodiversity versus his neurotypical. This is how he thinks. This is how she thinks. And what does that look like? What does it look like between the way she's thinking about it and the way he's thinking about it? And that's when I started to realize, oh my goodness, I think this is for real. In 2022, I said to my mother, that psychiatrist was really off the mark. And she said, why? I said, because I remember that typewriter dinging and they never got it. She responded to me, of course they did. I said, what? She's like, of course they did. I said, but they said I wasn't. She's like, oh, no. No, it was the 80s. They totally diagnosed you, but there was way too much stigma about medicating back then. So we just told you didn't have it. Sorry, what? Well, we just told you didn't have it. You were fine. Yes, the appointment I'm headed to shortly after this is therapy. But here's the thing. I had to learn how to cope my whole life. And yet, as a child, as a female child, had exhibited enough symptoms that in the 80s, I was tested and diagnosed, but told, no, that's just you. I did say at some point, I get that there was a stigma in the 80s, but at some point, I don't know, maybe when I was having my own children, maybe when I became an adult, maybe when at any freaking point, you could have told me. So the next time I went into my naturopath, I said to her, I said, by the way, since last time, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, this is what I was told. And she looked at me and she goes, holy crap. She goes, that makes so much more sense. And I said, why? She goes, it explains why your body's not connecting and why you are going through burnout. She goes, the feeling of burnout you have is because every single day you are having another mini burnout. She goes, your body can't handle that. On that day, she gave me my first set of supplements to help. And from that day forward, I went, oh, this is what it's like. In these last however many months, because it's taken a while to find the right balance of meds and supplements and other such. But in these last few months, I finally feel rested for the first time in my life. And yet, just the other day, I had another one of those waves of exhaustion. If you're not somebody who lives this world, the idea of being so tired that the idea of blinking is too exhausting to comprehend. At the same time, being so restless that you can't sit still. There are so many contradictions that take place in your mind that make it so frustrating and overwhelming that you just can't explain it. So on this episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that are working for me. I am not a medical professional. I don't even play one on TV. But here's the scoop. I do find caffeine. Now, looking back, it's like, oh, that explains so much. I used to be like a case a day Diet Coke drinker. And now that explains so much. I used to drink caffeine so that I could go to bed. Then I turned 40 and that doesn't happen anymore. We now have to be done that by 1 p.m. so that we can go to bed at 10. Caffeine's a big one. Finding the right balance of supplements or medications. That's between you and your healthcare providers. But have the conversation and know when something doesn't feel right. When I got onto the combination that I'm on, I can feel it within 15 minutes. And it is like somebody has parted all the fog in my brain. And instantly I'm like, ooh, let's get this done. It also helps me to get rid of that paralysis. I used to live in constant paralysis where something that would take me 37 seconds would take me 37 days to get to. It would get pushed off to the next day, off to the next day, off to the next day. And suddenly I ended up with a to-do list that was 17 pages long. I don't know if it's just me, but I have a hunch that a lot of ADHD people love their lists, and nothing will overwhelm you more than your gigantic list. So with that, I would say I have multiple lists, but I have today's list. And there is a limit to how many things I put on it. That limit is determined by how many appointments I already have booked. It is determined by how much of my time is already previously committed. And then when I go through, I figure out, okay, I'm going to work for 6 hours this day uninterrupted. How long is each of the tasks that I want to accomplish going to take? Okay, so that's going to take 4.5 hours. That leaves me 90 minutes. I will choose 2 optional things. If I happen to get all of those done, then I can look at something else. Actually, my favorite thing that I used to do, because to get out of the paralysis, the one day I took that 17 pages of to-do lists, I cut every one of those to-do list items up into like a raffle ticket, and then I put them in a jar. Because really and truly, it was a lot of things that were on the one-day list. And so what I do is when I get some free time in my schedule, I reach into my one-day list jar and I pull something out and I'm like, oh, update the header on the website. Okay, I can do that. Because if I said update the website, that's too much. But instead, I break it down section by section, page by page, section by section within each page. I make them individual items. Each one's got to be less than 20 minutes. I started using headphones in the last year. Part of it is that my husband's been home on his medical leave. And so I needed to be able to block him out. I needed to be able to block out a lot of other things. And somehow in the whole process of it, I went, oh my goodness, this is life-changing. And I'm not talking about earbuds, but I am talking about the big old hunkin' heavy headphones that go over and completely surround your ear. There is something about it when I put those on, it's almost like the rest of the world goes away. To me, it is almost the equivalent of when I go snorkeling. Because when I go snorkeling, I put my head in the water and the world goes away. And it is so much peace and so much relaxation. With that too, I also have music playlists based on what I need in that moment. I have things for mood. I have music that's going to hype me up. My favorite, actually, my hype music is very similar to what it is that they would have played in the gymnasium when I was getting ready to play basketball, volleyball, back in those teenage years when you're getting ready to go hit the court and play those games. That's the kind of music that's on my hype list. And when I'm headed into a very stressful situation, that's the music I play. When I was on stage last week in Vancouver, that's the music I played. I put on my headphones. I went, we're gonna chase a squirrel. Okay, so I had to speak on a stage in Vancouver and I was beyond scared spitless. I mean like beyond. We were like digestive issues, everything. TMI, I know, but like just beyond scared spitless. Even though I know my stuff, it still didn't matter. And so I put on my headphones and I went to the far end of their conference floor and I found a quiet corner. And then I realized that my feet were kind of tapping along with the music. So I thought, ooh, we better like duck behind a pillar somewhere where nobody can see me. And then I spotted that there was an outdoor patio. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go out there. So here I am. I'm on this outdoor patio all by myself, enjoying my music, dancing along, singing along, messaging with a girlfriend of mine because she's hyping me up because we all need a hype team. We all need a hype team. And then she sent me a message. She goes, wow, I sure hope nobody can see you. And suddenly I was no longer scared of that stage. I was fully ready to hit that stage because the idea that somebody might see me dancing and singing right in that moment, yeah, that was terrifying. But I also have playlists for focus. I discovered something called binaural beats, and I do that. And other people say they absolutely hate it. For me, I genuinely feel like it's flossing my brain, and I love it. I listen to music based on what projects I'm working on. If I'm just doing general research or building out my Canva, my graphics, things like that, then I definitely use things such as um, just my fun music, the ones that are going to put me in a happier frame of mind. If I'm headed into something stressful, whether it's a sales call or I'm about to take a stage or I'm dealing with conflict of some sort, I have my hype music. And that's that. I almost call it like the going into battle music, because that, like I said, that's what they played in the gym as we got ready for school or for sports. Find the playlists that work for you. I have to write it out. Digital doesn't do it for me. I need pen and paper. Yes, I have dozens and dozens of notebooks. When I was selling travel, I actually use coil ring scribblers. Here's the reason. It does not matter how good all the CRMs are and everything else. I needed something, one, that recorded it in the order that they came to me. Because if it was all loose pages, they could get lost, they could get shuffled, they could get this, that, or the other. I used an 8.5 by 11 coil ring, the 80-page scribblers, and I wrote all the information on there. Now, I did put it into my CRM so that I had it, but then I left that page in the coil ring. And every time I did something with that file, perhaps I printed off a quote, perhaps I printed off whatever it was. So long as we were still in the quote phase, I just clipped it to that notebook. So sometimes those 80-page notebooks could be mighty, mighty, mighty thick. And then when we had a resolution, whether the client booked or decided to do something else, that's when it would get removed from the scribbler. Because so long as it was in there, it was dated. I knew when I had talked to them, I had all that information. So that if ever I was like, okay, I've got a little bit of time, let me go through. I'm like, oh, I haven't talked to this one in a couple days. I better get a hold of them again. And I would go through all of that. Other things that I have really doubled down on is sleep. Sleep matters. I did not know how much damage I was doing to my own brain by not taking care of my sleep. There's so many different things out there, but the ones that worked for me is, I hated when people would talk about this, but I am here to say it works. You got to get those devices put away. You've got to get rid of that blue light. If I watch television, it keeps something triggered inside of my brain. Now, for years, I could not fall asleep without my television on, but it had to be like an old episode. Okay, because we're all friends here, I'm going to admit, I used to watch old replays of The Nanny on repeat because I knew exactly when the laughter was coming. I knew exactly what they were going to say next, and it was always happy. There was no negative. There was no politics. There was no this, that, or the other. It was just lighthearted, and I knew what to expect. But now I put away the devices and I read. I do have a playlist, and in fairness, it's on my TV. It's not even a playlist; it's just a channel. But I shut it off so that I only have the music playing, and I use a Hatch sleep system. So I also have the white noise as well. And yes, I do need both of them. I don't know why, but it just tends to work better. But sleep matters. I was also listening to somebody else talk a while ago about alcohol and how it can have its impacts and how it can make you not function fully the next day. But more importantly, they're doing studies right now in terms of ADHD and the fact that you are potentially more at risk for future dementia and things of that nature. I don't know how true that is. I don't know how in depth these studies are because I think they're just getting going. But I never enjoyed alcohol that much to begin with. So I am at a point now where I really don't consume it. I have no need for it. And if there is a possibility, it might be the thing that pushes me over the edge to more brain impairment. That's not on my to-do list whatsoever. A big one was recognizing my own attitude. It's it's that's a hard one, because there are some days that I almost want to claw my own skin off. A friend of mine is helping raise a relative, some minor youths, and uh, there's other situations involved, but a strong belief, strong belief, but no diagnosis yet, that the one child is ADHD. And there's frustration. I can't believe that they are behaving this way. I can't believe they're doing this. And I remember those feelings. I remember doing those same things, well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of those same things, and not being able to verbalize or understand it. And a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, a while ago, I would have what I would call an ADHD rage. And I have no idea what triggered it. I have no idea where it came from. And it came on like a ton of frickin' bricks. And I just felt so wildly out of control of everything in my life. So wildly unprepared or incapable of handling anything. It felt as though I had electricity flying through my body. Actually, what I said is it felt like I had mice or marbles or something, and they were racing underneath my skin, and I just wanted to rip it off, and I couldn't. And it was the wildest, weirdest thing. And everything made me angry. And I just felt so out of control, to the point at 11 o'clock at night that night, I sat down and completely moved my entire accounting program from one computer, or from one system to another system. And I entered all the invoices. I did all of it in one sitting. And I didn't start until 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. My husband came down and he goes, "Yeah, no, it is midnight." And I said, "Get out of here." And I think I might have said it a little nastier, because he's like, "Okay, bye-bye." But I got it all done. And the only reason why I quit is because my eyes were so dried out and cross-eyed at that point. I also didn't know about time blindness. I think the joke that really made me laugh with Shalene Johnson was when she said a neurotypical, if they're 20 minutes early, goes, "Oh, wow, this is awesome. I'm going to get there 20 minutes early." Versus a neurodiverse with time blindness goes, "Wow, I have time to paint the whole living room." And I legit have that. And I'm not going to lie. I am looking at the clock counting down right now and knowing that I got to wrap this up. Rejection sensitivity. I got to say, as an ADHD, can we tell a story to ourselves? When somebody says, "No, sorry, I'm busy," the things that we can tell ourselves about what they really meant, it can be hard. If you're not somebody with ADHD or with that rejection sensitivity disorder, I'm really going to ask you to give grace to those that are. Okay. Let's talk about what does work. Data. It doesn't make stories, and it puts the boundaries to the stories that you try to tell yourself. I know I've talked about this many times. When I started recording the data of my business in terms of downloads, in terms of subscribers, in terms of all of the different activities I do, it completely shifted the energy that I put towards it. It completely shifted the way I thought about it. It completely shifted everything related to it. And it made it neutral. I already talked about the notebook, the coil, like the coil ring. Again, I would love to say there was only one, but I'd be lying. I have multiple. To this day, I have multiple. I had to stop beating myself up for the quiet days. Oh, those were the hard ones. When I just couldn't bring myself to do something, I used to lay there in absolute agony and frustration of how dare I feel that way. And now I tell myself, you got one day. Just relax. Because the more I tried to force myself to do it, one day turned into two, which turned into three, and kept on going. I call it kind of the fire and ice, because the ice was the days I was frozen in place. But then I would also have days where I was on fire. And that actually, I would be on fire and immediately followed by ice. And it would make me so mad because I was like, okay, I'm setting new boundaries. I am closing my office down. I am not working past this time. And I'd be like, but I'm in such a good flow. You know what? We're going to pick it up tomorrow. You know what? I have a hunch neurotypicals probably can just pick that up tomorrow, and away they go. And instead, I would shut that off. So now when I have a genuine flow going, I don't care what hour I work till. Because then when I have an ice day, it doesn't matter. Well, look what I got done. And the more that I lean into allowing myself to have the ice days, the better it is. I'm not going to lie. I do lie to myself. Yep, I lie to myself. If I'm having an ice day, but something has to go out, I will tell myself, you know what? 10 minutes. That's it. I will even put 10 minutes on a timer on my phone. Yeah, it sounds like I am like trying to get a 5-year-old to do something. And sometimes I feel like that is what my brain is an obstinate 5-year-old. And it's okay. So I will put on a timer and I will say, okay, you got 10 minutes. That's it. But a lot of times just getting to the desk is the hardest part. And once I'm here, I'm like, you know what? If I'm here anyways, let's just go ahead and do it. So yes, I lie to myself. I lie to myself and tell myself, I only got to put in 10 minutes. I only got to do this. Apparently, I'm lying to myself when I'm like, sure, I can get this done before I got to go get dressed and leave. We will not be having a shower before we go out today. We will be doing a ponytail, a hoodie, and we are going to therapy. Understand that neurotypical don't understand the way we think, and it's not their fault. They can't comprehend, just like I couldn't comprehend how other people could, like, isn't this how everybody thinks? They can't comprehend that that's not how everybody thinks either. It's not their fault. They don't know any different than we do. I talked about those rage marbles. I don't know how to describe them beyond just like these electrified rage marbles that like race through my body and just that wildly out of control feeling. Have something you can control. Like I said, accounting. Shockingly enough, accounting becomes a really good thing because it's data. It's yes, it's no, it's this, it's that. If you ever get an invoice from me at 3:00 in the morning, just know it was not a good day. So the things that I'm working on, and then I really got to go. Working on patience. I would love to say that I am learning patience. I believe in reality, patience will be something that I don't know if I'm ever going to master. I don't want to put out the negativity that I can't be patient, but the data currently is showing it's not my strongest skill. Consistency. I am working on consistency. And yet at the same time, I am so insanely consistent with some of the things that we are producing, some of the things that we are putting out. And I can see how much of a game changer that is, how huge that is. And so I will continue to work on being more consistent on more things more often. I'm working on the long game. I'm not in this business to get me to something else, to get me to have a bigger career somewhere else, have a different career somewhere else, to do this or to do that. I am in this zone for the sole purpose of helping travel advisors build profitable businesses, and so that they don't have to make the same missteps that I made. Yes, I screwed some things up, 100%. But you know what? Those were the best educators. Best education I ever could have had in my business was the things that I screwed up. And finally, it's to finish a thought. A great example of that, quite a while ago, I recorded a podcast on how I screwed up consumer events. I can't honestly remember if I told you all the ways that I did them well. I I genuinely think I put out an episode, and I can't bring myself to go back and listen to it, where I just told you all the ways that I screwed it up. I don't think I told you the ways that I did it well, the things that I learned from it, the things that made it such a wild success so that we could sell things out in less than a month to fill, like, to do all these other sorts of things. Yep. Finishing my thoughts is going to definitely be something I continue to work on. My husband really would appreciate that too. A lot of times I start a conversation and then I get bored of it and leave partway through. He's like, "You're the one that started." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm over it." I am going to have more episodes on this, but I know people wanted to know what I did to make my travel business better. The reality is I had already like I wasn't in a full-time sales position in my travel business anymore when I was officially diagnosed. So everything I did prior was masking. And so when I look back and I can look at the things like that coil ring, to see what the things that did work, and then I look back and see the things that I wish I would have known so that I could give myself grace. I am going to be working on this to get more experts for you, because I know that this one, just based on the Facebook group alone, how many times it was requested, how many times it was asked for, and therefore how important it is to get you that information. Until next time, happy selling.